All right, so let's take a look at a couple word problems where we could use slope-intercept form. So this first problem here says a landscape architect charges $100 for C, an initial consultation, and then charges $85 an hour to design the landscaping for an area. The total cost C in dollars is given by the equation C equals 100 plus 85T, where T is going to be the time in hours the architect works on the design. So then it says to graph the equation. Well, they already are giving us this equation here, and it is in slope-intercept form. So if you think about y equals mx plus b, or in this case, they're just switching up the b and the mx, right? They're putting the 100 first and then the 85t second. But it's still the same equation. Remember, we can still easily identify the slope because it's the coefficient to that variable. So if I want to look at this, right, I have C equals 100 plus 85t. Now, if we're going to graph this the way we were graphing earlier in the lesson, we would say, okay, well, my B value is 100, so that's going to be my y-intercept, and then my slope is 85, or you could say 85 over 1. Now, if we were going to graph this in this format, we would want to first begin at the B, which is at the 100, but now we're going to have to move up 85 over 1. The problem is the grid on the left here is going by hundreds. So to go up 85, I could kind of estimate maybe where 85 would be here and then go over about 1. And then I'd have to estimate another 85 and go over 1. So you could do it that way. However, whenever the graph is going by such large increments, this is where I like to go back to my table of values. Now, in this case, my x is represented by this t, and the y is going to be the c value, right? Now, we already know that 0, 100 is our y-intercept, right? But let's say I want to put in 2, 85 times 2 plus 100, well, that would be 270. Or maybe I want to put in a 4. Right, and you could definitely use your calculator for these as well if you have larger numbers. So 85 times 4, and then I'm going to add 100 to that would be 440. And then maybe I want to do 6. 85 times 6 plus 100 would be 610. Now the reason I picked these numbers, and I could have done 1, 3, 5, or 7 as well, because they're all right on those little grid marks, so it's going to be easier to plot. So I have 0, 100. But now I'm going to do 270. So maybe I'll get a little bit better of an estimate. And then 440. And then 610. So it's really up to you. I mean, you can definitely do it the y equals mx plus b sort of way where you're moving up and over according to that slope. Or you could get a table of values and plot that. It's up to you which way you think is a little bit easier. Okay, so this is the one that we just did there in the red. Okay, now let's say part B. So suppose the architect raises the fee of the initial consultation to $125. So the total cost will now take, still charging the $85 an hour, but he's now going to charge a little bit more for that consult. So it's now going to be C equals 125 plus the 85T. Okay, again, still you could do the same thing. You could start at where you think 125 is, and then you can go up 85 estimated over 1. Or for me, I just don't like having to estimate when there's such a big gap there, so I'd prefer to try to find more specific numbers by using my table. So this time 0, 125. And then if I put, let's say, I'll do the same numbers again just so we can kind of see the comparison. So if I do 85 times 2, which is 170, but now I'm adding 125 to that, that's 295. And if I do 85 times 4, and then I add 125 to that, that's 465. And then if I do 85 times 6 and I add 125 to that, I get 635. So 2 and 295. 4 and 465, and 6 and 635. Now you'll notice all these blue dots were just right above. My line's not perfectly straight, but they're right above. And this actually would have made parallel lines because remember, as I said, the slopes here were the same, even though the y-intercepts were different. So looking at the second question here, you're taking drum lessons at a studio. Last year, the studio charged $10 per lesson. So that would basically be y equals 10x. And this year, the studio raised their rates and they're charging $12 per lesson. So that would basically be like 12x. So they're giving the equations in these different variables here. So they're going to use f and l, and where f is going to be the fee and l is the lessons. And so then for this one here, it would be the fee equals $12 times however many lessons. So let's graph these two. So let's graph the equations in the same coordinate plane, and then we use them to find the difference between the fees a person could be charged for taking 48 lessons. So again, right here, my b value or my y-intercept would be 0, and my slope would be 10 or 10 over 1. For the other equation, my b value would also be 0, but this time my slope would be 12 over 1. Now again, it's easy to plot the y-intercept, right? That they're both going to be at 0, 0. But the problem is now I have to do my slope, and I'd have to go up 10 over 1. Now going up 10, I might be able to estimate, but then I'm going over 1. It's going to be very difficult to graph that. So again, this is where I would probably choose to make my table. And I would probably choose to just pick some of the numbers that are already on the x-axis there, or the l-axis, since x is representing this L here. So this is really like my L, and then this is like my F, right? So, of course, I'm going to start with 0 because I know that 0, 0 is one of my points. Well, let's say I do 8, right? 10 times 8 is 80. And then let's say I do 16. 16 times 10 is 160. And then let's say I'm going to skip to 32. 32 times 10 is 320. And then I'm going to go to 48. 48 times 10 is 480. So when I graph those, I can see exactly how this line is going to kind of formulate. And that was a lot easier than trying to go up 10 over 1, up 10 over 1 with all these tiny little grids. All right, so now we want to do the other one with the 12. So again, we're still starting with 0, 0. But this time, if I do 8, 8 times 12 is 96, right? But then I'm going to do 16. 16 times 12 is 192. If I want to do 24 times 12, it's 288. 32 times 12, 384. And 40 times 12 is 480. So 8 and 96, now I'm going to estimate where that 96 is. The next one, 16, 192, I'm still estimating, but I don't have to estimate based off of the last point that was already an estimate, so that's why I kind of like it better. 24, 288, 32, 384, and 40, 480. And notice this one, it's as we go up, it's starting to creep away a little bit more from the pink line there. Now, if I did do 48, 12 times 48, that would be 576. So we're going to be right up here. Well, it's hard to draw those lines straight, as you can see. All right, so this would be the two spots there for the 48. So we know that the original lessons would have cost $480 for 48, and then the new price is going to be $576 for the total 48 lessons.